Day 2, 4 p.m. So I'll try to keep this as short and snappy as I can. And obviously, if you're caffeine starving, feel free to come at our booth. You probably realize I'm Italian from my accent, so happy to invite you for an espresso. Any excuse works. So I'm Gabriele Columbro. I'm the executive director of the Symphony Software Foundation. It's interesting to be on stage just after Capital One because we are an open source foundation, and Capital One is certainly one of the most forthcoming firms into participating to open source. But I'm just going to have a quick look at the agenda. I want to first of all let you know what we guys do and why would you care, whether you are a developer or a senior executive. I want to share with you how the Symphony Software Foundation, by the means of open source and open standard, is driving a new wave of collaboration in financial services. We'll then go through a demo. Sadly, it's recorded. I used to be a developer, but my developers do not allow me anymore to do live demos. So I'm going to have to go through that. And we'll build a custom integration with Symphony. Most importantly, I want to show you how you can run it in our open developer platform. There's been a lot of talks about DevOps, about modernizing the way we do business. We offer a fully hosted, end-to-end, open source developer platform to our open source project committers. So we'd love to see more of you there. And so hopefully by the end of the talk, you'll have enough motivation to join and participate in our community. So just to get the feel of the room, how many of you know Symphony? OK, not that many. So Symphony was created 2 years ago. It's a for-profit company that runs a secure and compliant messaging and collaboration system. It started from financial markets. You'll see that our members is really large buy-side and sell-side firms. But it's really quickly evolving into intra- and inter-firm collaboration. And so one of the, for today's presentation, the most important aspect is that Symphony is a platform, and so provide APIs, as you obviously would know, and a concept of an app store. The idea is really to provide the user sort of the a la carte experience of choosing what financial and collaboration applications they want to have on this very secure, very compliant sort of collaboration network. Now, what's the foundation there for then? Well, when you look at our membership, it's sort of the largest firms that created Symphony. And so, first of all, they wanted to make sure that the software will live into an independent arena. We are a non-profit foundation where all the different constituents of the ecosystem could contribute and influence the evolution of the platform. For today's presentation, the second most important, I would say, element of our charter is to create this open ecosystem on top of Symphony. If you think about other incumbent players, proprietary players, it's really an all-you-can-eat type of model. And we see through our membership that we can have people collaborate on building common solutions for a common set of problems. And so really, we are seeing a major uptake, especially in the last year, I would say last half, in this area. If you're familiar with open source, then security and sort of the innovation that open source drives were obviously the two additional sort of tenets of our foundation. Now, what did we get? The foundation, I got my first budget a little over a year ago. So we have 1 year in business, really. And I think it's pretty impressive. It's been exciting, especially over the last 6 months. We grew up to 50 open source projects. Some of them contributed by Symphony. Some of them contributed by some of these large members, Goldman Sachs, BlackRock. So we're really creating, market has been really active. We're really creating, again, a lively ecosystem there. Now, we have more than 20 member organizations. And one point that I would like to mention here, you guys come from financial services. I'm relatively new to this vertical, but certainly working groups and sort of standard bodies are, I think, pretty common in this industry. I do think, though, that, as we discuss later, we add to it the open source aspect of it, and the sort of two elements combining are really driving a much more concrete integration between these different firms. Just a comment on our members. The Platinum members were our founders. The Gold members are large technology and sort of data providers for the industry. And we recently, again, in the spirit of having an open and inclusive foundation, we recently introduced a silver tier for much smaller fintech startups to come and join and participate to the open innovation. And certainly, in many cases, get some good degree of visibility with my board and my membership. So I want to spend just a second on, you see this is a Hadron Collider, whatever, Collider, in case you're not familiar with it. But the reason I'm mentioning this is that whether you are, again, a developer or a senior executive, we are seeing the two worlds, the forces sort of colliding in enterprise-driven foundation like ours. I mean, 10 years ago, when I became an Apache committer for the first time, I had dreadlocks. I didn't expect the largest firms in the world to call me up to run an open source foundation. And so to me, this is just one of the strong signs of how not only the individual should care about open source, and clearly it's an individual-driven. Developers love to do open source. On the other hand, we are seeing decision makers now finally understanding that open source should be a key part of their technology strategy. And again, I think we are living proof of this combination, let's say, of this collision. And really, a lot of this is actually driven by the fact that open source by itself sometimes can be, if you want, a little bit disconnected, a little bit sort of, again, individual-driven, while oftentimes open standards by themselves can be very abstract, very, not often have the buy-in of, let's say, the actual end users. And so if you combine the two things, we are seeing an actual, virtuous cycle of engagement that creates successful ecosystems and ultimately successful platforms. So if you're thinking about developing a platform, certainly a part of it, open sourcing, we believe is going to be a successful strategy. Now, how did we get to 50 projects out there? It's not easy to have these large firms collaborate. What we realized, and coming from, again, mainstream, again, vendor, or the Silicon Valley, let's say, clearly my accent is from the Silicon Valley. But we realized that a developer experience, having built communities out there, is sort of the most important thing to get people to actually want to spend potentially their private time on our open source projects. And so in last November, we launched what we call the Open Developer Platform, which is first and foremost, an open API access to Symphony. So if you guys want to build bots, integrations, apps, and you want to do it open source in our foundation, we give you the full end-to-end developer infrastructure. Again, there's been a lot of talks about DevOps, about automating processes. We do that for you if you decide to do it open source in our foundation, up to the level of continuous delivery on OpenShift on Docker, obviously continuous integration, and the release in the main repositories out there. Now, this checks the boxes for the dev, but as I said before, we also want to make sure for our members that whatever comes out of the foundation is secure, compliant, high quality. These guys are not going to just take whatever dreadlock open source project and consume it. And so we have a very high bar when it comes to IP cleanliness, security, software quality, and that's been discussed by all of our members. These are criteria that a large part of the industry will be able to accept. So now that you know the introduction, let's get into the juicy part. We're going to demo how to build an integration on Symphony. If you're not familiar with the integration framework, it's been contributed 3 months ago to our foundation. Baseline, it allows to connect any webhook-based service out there to Symphony. And again, knowing that Symphony is this, secure and compliant transport layer, if you want, you really can think about integrating a whole lot of business processes, whether they are trading desktop or internal development, collaboration processes. There's really big potential here to create a unified experience. And so what we're going to develop today is a HubSpot integration. Don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a marketing CRM tool. A bit selfishly, we use it internally in the foundation, and so we wanted to actually dog food and show a real-life example of what you can integrate with Symphony. just to be clear, it's not rocket science. We're just going to create a form in HubSpot, as you would expect in a marketing system, and make sure that any submission of that form is actually sent through the secure network of Symphony and notified in your chat. So before we start, as I say, it's going to take us 5 minutes to do it. Obviously, that excludes Maven downloading the world, which we do not take responsibility for that. So as you would expect, we start by checking out and building the project. We have a universal integration in the Foundation repository, in the organization, that you can use as a start, as a sample, to really just jumpstart your development. Obviously, you can fork it in your repo. We'd love for you to contribute to us. It just takes a Jira issue to get that started. We then go on and just simply rename the project into what we're trying to build, so a Symphony HubSpot integration. And just to make sure that we're not cheating, Italians, we're going to run with an empty Maven repository just to show that after Maven downloads the world, we have a build successful. So again, this is something that you can just go on, check out our repo, and build right now. Then, using your ID of choice, you will go on and just find and replace all the universal occurrences into HubSpot occurrences. Now, we completely realize that this is not the most automated or templatized way of developing, but bear in mind, this is a sample that was built last week, and we hope our community is going to help us to, again, make this a much faster jumpstart by an archetype or some kind of other template. Now, we love test-driven development, so we're going to do a quick test before we actually run it locally. Again, very simple. It's just a form that we created, your typical marketing contact form. Let's see what happens. Using webhooks, HubSpot exposes a webhook interface. We're actually going to start, again, test-driven. And so we want to capture the actual payload that HubSpot will send to us. We're going to use one of the many tools that allow this. Request bin allows you to capture, to provide the throwaway URL that allows you to capture a payload, which we'll then go add in our source code. Again, nothing crazy there. We're just writing an integration test that checks on the payload. And just stopping for a second here, this is the actual implementation code of the integration. Again, I'm not going to spend much time on this because it's just one Java class, 6 lines of boilerplate JSON parsing. But for you to know, the idea is that with a single class, starting from a template, you're able to connect any application into a very secure environment like Symphony. As we move on, we'll just try that the test pass, and we'll quickly move into actually running the integration locally. In order to do that, remember, Symphony is a cloud product, so we need to make sure, first of all, that we have certificate and environments in place. Now, again, if you do this open source with us, we will provide, we will provision, we will take care of all the sort of known developer topics for you. There is a run script that is provided, and that will run a Spring Boot application, which is the one that runs the integration, and actually a Node.js application that runs the configuration that you see on the Symphony side. Before we can actually run this, we need to make sure that Symphony can see our local machine, because remember, it's a cloud product. So we created a reverse DNS tunnel to our port 8080, and we're just simply testing that response. Once this is up and running, we can go in. Actually, we're going in Symphony first and creating a chat that will, receive our message once the new form is submitted. We go to Symphony, add the application in there, and again, this is all out of the box. We're just configuring a description, define the chat that we want to send the messages in, and then copy the webhook URL that we're going to go back in HubSpot and paste to actually close the loop of the integration. The app gives us a warning that the application is configured. And as we, again, go back and paste it back into HubSpot, no surprise, you will fill the form. Again, not that much suspense, if you want, since it's a video. But clearly, when we submit the form, we can see the application finally notifying into Symphony. Now, as I'm running quite out of time, I want to focus for a second on what does the foundation give you should you decide to do this open source. Again, all committers, and it takes a Jira issue, will get a full end-to-end secure and compliant process that will ensure that whatever comes out of the foundation, not only as a developer you didn't have to worry about it, but whatever comes out of it is value that your firms can already deliver because it already complies with the security and IP requirements from their sides. And so, just to conclude with the demo, we're just going to quickly change a string in our main class, a string in our test, just to trigger, upon pushing up to GitHub, Travis is our continuous integration server is automatically building the application. And in turn, that is going to trigger an OpenShift build. If you're not familiar with OpenShift, it's the sort of the Red Hat container hosting offering. And so we're actually embedding the application in Docker and running it in our open developer platform. 9 minutes later, the application is actually live. I'm not going to show you the form again, because obviously it will work. And if I had a mic, I would probably drop it, but it will kind of be difficult as it's wired. So I want to conclude by saying that the idea why we stress so much on quality. We work with large regulated industries. You guys know what it means to develop inside these firms. We need to make sure that we give them the peace of mind that they know that our projects are valuable. Not all the projects are the same. Projects that have a real ecosystem are the ones that are valuable, and your business leaders will decide to invest on. And so the reason why we put those bars, if you want, of quality, is really related to the fact that we want to have a clear project life cycle that can suggest to consumers as well, not only to developers, what's an active project, what's a valid project for you to invest on as a developer and as a firm. Now, I'm going to conclude with saying, hopefully, again, it was really quick, but all of that is published on our GitHub, and we have a video on our blog posts. Hopefully, that's going to entice you to develop integrations on Symphony. Even more important, hopefully, you realize that we can do all the heavy lifting for you should you decide to do this open source. And last but not least, again, whether you're a developer or a decision maker, open source is good for your health and probably for your career. And said that, whether, again, you want to consume, contribute, or join the foundation, please come talk us at our booth. We're also doing a headphones draw. So if you want to drop us our business card, and we are hosting a happy hour at 6 p.m. So there are a couple of questions. So how do you ensure IP cleanliness of the projects? So very good question. We have multiple services that we're using. We're currently using version I, and we're in conversations with Sonatype for using Nexus Enterprise. As you know, they have all sort of configurable rules. I mean, I see many companies just keep their repository closed. I'm like, no, we are bound to use Apache license as per our bylaws. And so we enforce that any Apache-compatible license should be able to come in. How do you combat arguments against open source? Well, depends where the argument comes from. Certainly, we still see a lot of cultural limitations there, but with the buy-in from business leaders, we know we can make that. And we're actually organizing a big event in New York in June around open source readiness. And with that, I think I'm way over time, so thank you so much for your attention.